Okay, so in this chapter we're just going to get our specular maps done, and I'm going to show you how to integrate them with the texture files for Unity, and how to keep them separate for Marmoset. So first of all, we're going to open up our textures. We're actually going to open up all the normal maps. So in fact, we're just going to jump straight into using Crazy Bump. So I'm just going to open up Crazy Bump. I'm just going to press the open button, and I'm going to press the open normal map from file. And first thing I'm going to do is open up the Forge accessories normal map and press OK. That's going to open that up for us. And it's going to do things like displacement maps and stuff like that, which we don't really want to do. I'm going to turn off parallax displacement, and we want to keep the specularity on. And what we're going to do here is go over to our specularity map here. So this is going to generate a specularity map from our normal map, and if we zoom in, we're able to see we've got the details there. What I want to do is turn up the very fine details, and with the specular map I'm going to do enhanced detail, and I'm going to turn that down slightly, turn the brightness down, and turn the contrast up. Doesn't look like we're going to get what we want from this, so we're just going to jump back into Photoshop. Let's go ahead and open up our diffuse textures. Might as well open all of them while we're here. There we go. So from here, we're just going to desaturate them. So we're going to go to Adjustments and Desaturate. And might as well do it for all the rest, so it's ready for us. Okay. So what we want to do here is sort of bring out details that we want to be bright or dark. So black represents a matte surface which has very little gloss, whereas white represents a surface which has high gloss. So all we want to do here is go into the image adjustments. I've just duplicated the layer. We're going to go into levels, and we're going to see what kind of details we can get to come out of this just by playing with these sliders. So I think what I might do is just do a high pass on it. So filter, other, high pass. That's not really going to give us what we want either. So let's just manually paint this. So I'm going to leave this here as a bit of a guide, and what I'm going to do is just go onto the layer above. I'm just going to darken this down so it's almost black. So you can barely see it. So basically everything here is going to have very little shiny properties to it. And we're going to manually paint on our specular. We're going to create a new layer over the top and choose a white colour. And with our brush we're going to choose a speckled brush. So something a bit like this perhaps. Nope, that's not speckled. Something a bit like that. Yeah, something like that would work. Or perhaps something a bit like this. So I think I'm going to do with this, it's a little bit more random. So here I'm just going to stroke on sort of little flecks of white. You could just put some noise over it if you wanted to, but I find just hand painting it usually gives a better result. So I'm just painting on, essentially these areas will glisten. So it's almost a bit like, I guess it'll be sweat or something. I'm actually going to paint on some sweat as well, so just down his back. So remember, the brighter the white, the higher specularity there will be, the higher shininess. So we'll probably end up just fading these down a little bit. Oops, wrong layer. Oh, I've been doing it on the wrong layer all this time, haven't I? Fantastic. So this is me making constant mistakes. Let's just do brightness. I always do that, put a new layer on and actually forget to use it. So let's just lightly paint these on here. You don't have to follow any sort of logic for these bits, it's just going to provide a little bit of specularity to the surface without the whole thing being shiny and plastic looking. Okay, let's do the arms. I think that's all the skin we have there. So let's just turn the opacity of this down so I can see where everything else is. Here we have the gloves. The gloves are going to be higher specularity. In fact, we could probably use the glove layer itself. If I duplicate this layer and select the gloves, and then go to adjustments, brightness and contrast. I just want to put the layer opacity up and do adjustments, brightness and contrast. Turn the brightness up. And I'm going to do this to all glove sections at once, I think, so I'm just going to select all the glove areas. Just so we're affecting everything as a whole and we don't have anything looking too odd. So that'll do. Looks like I managed to deselect this one. Let's just select that again. There we go. So it's going to put that layer opacity back to normal. Go to adjustments, brightness and contrast, turn the brightness up. From here, I'm just going to go on to dodge and burn. I'm going to choose dodge, and I'm just going to brighten up a few of these areas here. Put the exposure up slightly. Just going to bring out some more highlights here. So having this sort of bled out kind of look is actually going to be really good, just because the surface of the gloves are meant to be leather, and this is going to give a really good leather effect. So that looks good there. Let's just do the same for this bit. Just going to hold down Alt and darken some of these bits. So I think it'll look quite effective if it's a bit mottled. So it looks like there might be still a few shiny bits left of his gloves, but a lot of it's just now old and weathered, beat up and rough. So that'll do nicely. It's going to drop that selection. And now we have the belt buckle area, which I want to be extremely bright. So I'm just going to select around here. I want this to be extremely shiny. So I'm just going to select everything that we did in the belt buckle area, to deselect part of that arm there, and I'm just going to basically paint this very, well, not very white, but almost perfect white. So increase the brush size, fill that up. And I'm going to set that to overlay. Oops. Helps if I do it on the right layer, I suppose. Just going to create a new layer, set it to overlay, and really brighten this area up. I'm going to duplicate that, and again, to increase the intensity of it. Still keep some surface detail as well. Going to do the same here for the charms on the gloves. Going to do that on an overlay layer as well. Go to the next layer. Make that rather shiny. There we go. So same where the rivets are as well. So I'm just going to draw a selection out around this area. I know that everything falls within this space now, so don't have to worry about missing anything. Just going to go back to these overlay layers and build this up. Oops, wrong layer. There we go. Alrighty, so one last thing to do is going to create a new layer, and I'm going to paint on some sweat on his on the back of his, well, on his back. Going to take the hardness of this brush down slightly and the size, and I'm just going to paint little beads, sweat down there. Of course I got that selected. Deselect that, and just gonna Now because it's on a separate layer, you can put it in as hard as you want, and we can just, you know, edit it out and knock it back a little bit later. So another good place to put specularity is on top of where scars are. So just reduce the opacity of this layer so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to turn the opacity of my brush down and turn the hardness down a little bit further. And where I've got these scars on his back, I'm just going to put these slight highlights in there. As scar tissue is usually quite shiny, at least the scars that I've got are shiny anyway, compared to the rest of the skin. Nothing too dramatic, but let's drop it in there. And I know he's got a scar on his other arm right there. And we have a slightly mottled one here, so I'm going to do this very, very lightly. And I'll do it. And then we have the scar on his chest, which I'm going to do a very similar thing with as well. There we go. Might even set that to an overlay layer, just so we actually get some of the shadows popping through, which will make it look a little bit more uneven. Oops. Right, doesn't like this. Wants it to be an overlay layer. Oh, it's just because we had the opacity turned down, that's fine. And dun-dun-dun-dun. Okay, let's just increase the opacity of this layer here. And let's double that overlay layer. Okay, just adjusting the opacity. I might actually add a bit of sweat down here. Okay, so let's just play around with this a little bit more. I think what we'll do now is we'll just collapse all the layers down. So select the layer at the top and do Control Shift Alt and E, and we'll affect the brightness and contrast using the levels. So I want the skin to have a slight specularity to it, but not too much. I think that'll do us quite well. Alrighty, so to get this into a specularity map for Unity, we need to actually integrate it into our diffuse texture. What I'm going to do first though is save it out separately, and I'm going to save that as _SM for specular map. Press OK and save that out. I'm just going to download a helpful little plugin called I believe it's called Super PNG for Photoshop, and that can be found right here. Just bring this website over. It's found at fnordware.com/superpng, and this will allow us to choose what channel we want to set as our alpha channel. So just going to get that downloading first of all. You can actually see the download link. There we go. I'm not fond of giving away my email address. There we go. So that's downloading. And we just need to drop this into our plugins folder. So just going to bring everything over here. And what we need to do is just bring up our File Explorer. I'm going to go to C, Program Files, Adobe, Photoshop, and then we'll go into Plugins. We'll then drag and drop this into this file here. And we'll just need to restart Photoshop, so I'll just go ahead and do that. It's worth probably saving this stuff first of all. So I'm going to save that as, and I'm going to do forge _ SM PSD, just so we can come in and change our layering options if we need to. So I'm just going to exit Photoshop and restart. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up our upper body DM PNG, and we'll also open up our SM PNG. We're going to do Control A and Control C, and we're just going to duplicate this layer and go into our channel options, and we're going to create a new channel which will select Alpha 1. So let's go ahead and paste that into our Alpha 1 channel. Just activate RGB again. We'll then turn off the background layer and do File, Save As. And I'm just going to create a new folder here called Unity, and choose from the drop down box, choose Super PNG, which is now there for us. Press Save and we'll get this option. We want to choose Alpha 1 as the alpha channel and press OK. Might take a little while to save for us, it will get there in the end. Just going to pause the video while it does that. There we go, so that's saved. And now if I just bring up my textures folder, let's have a look, just bring that over here. And go into textures, into our Unity file. Now we'll see that this looks all washed out. It's because it's got the alpha of channel applied as a, it applies a transparency to any image that you'll view in Windows. But when we take it through to Unity, it will extract the alpha channel from it, and it will leave the diffuse channel intact. So the RGB channels are still the same, only it will use the alpha channel as a grayscale instead. So don't worry about that. Okay, so let's just get this texture into Unity, and we'll have a look, see what it looks like. Okay, so we're back in Unity. I'm just going to delete this original diffuse texture. Going to right click and go to Import New Asset, and help if I actually went to the right folder. So Forgemaster, Final, Textures and Unity. And we're going to import the upper body _DM, which has our specular map in it. So notice it's loaded incorrectly, it's not like it's transparent. Let's just set the, there we go, everything to high res and press apply. Now if we go ahead and select the body, and we're going to change the upper torso to a bumped specular. You notice that it doesn't appear as though he is made of plastic anymore, and with a little bit of tweaking in terms of the lighting, you'll be able to see that we actually have a decent specular on his body now. It looks like it's glistening with sweat. Around the back, if we can catch the light, we can see sweat on his back there. You could also enhance that on the diffuse texture if you wanted to, but you know, you could always have streams of dirt. So it looks like the sweat has washed the dirt away or something like that. But just to have a look at how everything comes together, if we go to Game Objects, Create Other, and we'll put in a point light. We'll move this point light out to the back, and hopefully in line with his body. Just turn the intensity up and turn the range up as well. So with that light in place, we're able to see that there's specular on his back. It adds a lot more to the mesh. Of course, you can always tweak this later on. I don't want to spend too much longer on it because I've really got to get these tutorials wrapped up now. But if we go to our shaders and turn the shininess down, so it's a bit more of an all-over gloss, you can see we actually get a lot more detail popping up there. So we can see the sweat on his back and slight glistening on his skin. You can see that his scars are actually shiny as well. Not very shiny, but ooh, that was confusing. But shiny enough. So specular maps add a lot. Get that a little bit closer. And you can spend a lot more time on your specular maps than I am. The arms. And there we go. So that's the specular map for his upper body. Let's just sort out the rest. So back in Photoshop now. We're going to close that down. Going to close that down. Don't want to save anything there. Let's just open up, and we'll bring in our head. We'll just desaturate this and duplicate it. Just going to add a black background to this, just in case we need to erase anything. And I'm going to turn the opacity down. In fact, I'm going to see what I can get out of it just by using what we've got. So I'm going to go to Adjustments and Levels, and I'm going to see if I can bring out some specular details just by using the grayscale. Not really. So it's going to be a manual paint job again. If let's just reduce the opacity of this right here. There we go. Create a new layer over the top, and let's get the skin surface done. So let's go ahead and choose our sort of spotty brush. Something like this. Select white. And we're just going to paint this over the surface of the head. Same as we did the last time. So that's not going to show up mega bright because we've got the opacity down on the brush. And now I'm just going to put in a few little details. Turn the opacity up a bit more. And just going to paint in some sweat on his brow. Maybe around the back of his head. Just down his neck. Having some brighter sections will always help sell that. So you can spend a lot more time on this, but I'm having to speed this up now, so I'm just running out of time to get this done. Okay, so that'll be the head done. We'll put a little bit on his ears as well. Just drop down to the other layer. That'll do. Okay, for the eyes, we want them extremely shiny, so on the top layer I'm just going to select around the eyes here. Just going to turn the opacity back up on this layer so I can kind of see what I'm doing. I will be turning it back down afterwards. I'll also do the backs of the eyes as well. And just going to get the paint bucket. Oops, wrong layer. Go on to the top layer. Paint bucket those. And that's good. And cool. Let's just deselect that. Just going to tidy this up here so it doesn't overlap. There we go. And let's just turn the opacity of this back down. There we go. So the beard isn't going to be extremely shiny. So what I'm going to do first of all is just select around the beard. And I'm going to bring its specularity up a little bit just by going into brightness and contrast. And just kind of giving it a bit more contrast, so we're looking at more like individual strands that are shining rather than the thing as a whole. So I'm just going to create a new layer and set it to overlay. I'm going to get my paintbrush, going to get a soft one, and just touch over here, add a few highlights to it. There we go. Alrighty, so we're done with the head. We'll do file save as, we'll do PNG, and we're going to save that as _SM and save. Okay. Just remember to save it as SM, otherwise you're going to end up overwriting your original diffuse map, and that's not what we want to do. So let's go ahead and open diffuse map, which just is already open, of course. Let's just close it. Open up forge head _DM. Open up our oops, wrong button. File open, and we'll open up our _SM there. Going to Control A, Control C, go to our DM, go to channels, create a new alpha channel and paste that in. Go back to RGB, file save as, set super PNG and go to Unity. And we'll save that, choose alpha 1 and press OK. And we'll just wait for this to save out. We're going to take a bit of time. Okay, so that's saved. Let's go ahead and finish off the rest. Let's just close these down. And yeah, let's just close that. Let's open up the apron, the accessories, press OK. Now for this, it's going to be a lot easier to do. I'm going to duplicate this layer. I'm going to go to adjustments and then desaturate. I'm then going to go to the levels and bring everything closer together. And with the apron, you can see it's starting to get a bit mottled, which is good. I'm going to bring those a little bit closer. There we go. So I'm basically going to try and emulate the effect that I got on the gloves. I don't want the apron to be particularly shiny, but I do want it to have that sort of aged, broken kind of look. So some of it will be shiny, some of it won't be. So I think that's going to get pretty good kind of effect. Got the added bonus that our hammer is going to be very shiny as well, with these little areas of it being worn. And we've actually got a lot for nothing there, so I think we can pretty much just use that as it is. I'm just going to grab the dodge brush, and I'm going to see what I can bring out of this section down here. I'm going to set this range to shadows, and see if I can bring a little bit out of this area. So you can see we're getting some noise there, which is good. Just want to sort of hint at these things. So we're getting a lot for barely any effort, which is great. So that's going to be nice down here. That's going to give a really cool effect. Okay, and yep, that's fine. We're quite happy with the specularity on everything else, so I'm actually just going to use that. I'm going to save that as a PNG, and I'm going to call that _ SM for specular map. Save, press OK. Pause that while it saves out, and that was done relatively quickly. So just going to close that down now. I'm going to go open, and I'm going to open up the accessories and the accessories SM. Open those up. Just going to do Control A, Control C, head over to my diffuse map, and go to just going to duplicate that layer just to make sure nothing else happens. Create a new alpha channel and drop that in. And yep, that's all good. Gonna go File, Save As, go to Unity, save as a super PNG, and I'm gonna call that _DM. Save, there we go, with the Alpha 1 channel selected. And just while this does its thing, just gonna pause it because it really does take its time. Or maybe not as much time as I thought it would. Okay, so that's done. Can close those down. So let's open up our final thing, which is going to be the lower torso. Just going to open these up, and we're going to have the trousers, which we really don't want to have many specular whatsoever, really, because it's cloth. And the belt, which we do want to have specular, and the boots, which will have specular as well. So let's see what we can get. See if we can get something for nothing. We'll desaturate. Going on to adjustments and then levels. And I'm just going to push this all the way over to the left. There we go. So we've got some worn leather on the boots and on the belt as well. That's great. Yeah, that's going to work out quite well. Going to click OK on there. And now for the trousers, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to duplicate the background again. I'm going to go to adjustments and then desaturate. I'm going to bring that layer up above, and then I'm just going to select around the trousers, get as close as I can. Keep on doing that. I really need to recalibrate this display. And just select the rest of the trousers. There we go. Okay. So from here, I'm just going to go onto levels. I really want to bring them quite dark. Now I'd quite like those stains to be specular. So what I'm actually going to do is bring this down so we've got the white on the outside and the black on the inside. And then I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments and Invert. And that's going to make everything, well, pretty much the opposite way around. So I want those stains to have a whiteness to them, which you know, kind of look like it's water or oil or something like that. It's going to tone down the white outputs a little bit, so it's not quite so in your face. There we'll get a little bit of specularity on the trousers with the pattern. And then we'll get the stains on there as well, which will be a bit grey, so not stupidly bright, but we'll accept that, that's fine. Now I'm just going to do Control-Shift-I to invert the selection, delete it, and that's going to give us the specularity for our boots and everything like that. Just going to clean up around here, make sure that's not encroaching. And I'm just going to grab a brush with a bit of black and just paint over there just to make sure that's tidy. Okay, so we have our specularity for our lower body. Might just turn the white points up on the belts, so a little bit shinier. There we go. File, save as PNG, change that to SM and save. Let's pause it while that saves. Actually no need to, it's already at 95%, so I might as well just leave it running. And while that's done now, let's go ahead and close that. File, open, and we'll choose our lower body and our lower body SM. We'll do Control A, Control C. We'll create a new layer on here. Trying to remember if I actually applied the bent normal maps to this. Doesn't look like I did, but I must have done. Let's just go ahead and add the alpha channel. Paste that in there. Go back to RGB. Do File, Save As, Super PNG, go to Unity, and save it as the DM in there, and press OK. I'm definitely going to pause it while this does. Okay, so that's all saved up. So that's all of our specularity maps done. So let's get it all into Unity and see how everything looks when it's all complete. Alrighty, we're back in Unity. So let's go ahead and switch out these textures. Just going to delete that point light for now. And we'll just put a new one in a bit. Let's just put a directional light in. So let's create directional light. And let's just move that out. Doesn't matter where you put the directional light, it just flows in a single direction. So let's get something like that. So that'll do fine. So let's just get our head in there. Let's just delete this one. Let's right click and import new asset, and we'll import the head underscore DM. Let's just set our properties up correctly. and apply. Let's just get rid of the lower torso, right click, import new asset. Let's get the lower torso in there. Again, we'll do trilinear, anisotropic, 4096, apply. Right click and import new assets. Oops, sorry, let's just delete the accessories. Right click, import new asset, and accessories. Let's set that up correctly and apply. Okay, so that's all the textures in place. Let's just get the these shaders set up to reflect it. So there's the head, we've got the lower torso, bump to specular, select the apron, bump to specular, and we'll put the accessories in there. Do the same with the hammer. Yep, it's using the same map, so there we go. Alrighty, we have all our specularity in there. We've got some cool effects going on around on the apron. Some of it's shiny, some of it isn't. We've got sweat on his arms, we've got some shiny gloves with patches of it not being shiny. His eyes should be nice and shiny for us. Let's just get rid of this directional light. And we'll put some point lights in. So go to game object, create other point light. Let's move that into position. Hell fuck, I actually tell where it was. There we go. Turn the intensity and the range up. Let's just tell it to draw shadows, soft shadows. Okay, so we've got some shiny eyes, that's good. Let's turn the shininess up on, turn the shininess down rather. There we go. So it looks like we could have done with a bit more blending around on the eyes, but that's good enough. Got the specularity working there, got the specularity on the tools. That's pretty good. Let's try out the hammer, that's going to look pretty cool I think. Let's just move the lights over. Yeah, the hammer looks pretty good. Cool. So, there we have it, we have our guy. Let's get some nice lighting set up. Just going to change this colour, so it looks like we might be in forward rendering mode, so let's just change that. Let's put it onto high resolution. I'm going to go to build settings and click player settings, and in here, no, I think I'm in the wrong section. Yeah, these are settings I'm not too familiar with, as normally it's not me who deals with this stuff. So edit, render settings. No, not that one. Edit project settings, graphics. No. So let's try one more thing. I believe project settings. Player. Rendering, static patching, dynamic patching. Yeah, things changed place since I last used this. There we go. So we're going to edit, project settings, player, click on global, go into other settings, and change rendering path to deferred lighting. So that's going to look a whole lot better for us. So let's get this point light in. It's going to be casting soft shadows for us now. Okay, let's go ahead and just do a quick lighting setup. Just going to Control C and Control V that light. You may recognise this lighting setup if you've seen some of my tutorials before. Let's just change the range. There we go. So the only seam which is visible is where the head meets the neck. I think that's mostly caused by the normal mapper more than anything else, but to be honest, it's barely noticeable unless you really know it's there or you look for it, so I'm quite happy to leave it as it is. So just moving these lights around, playing with the colour and the intensity. I think anyone would be able to figure out Unity's light controls, really. It's not difficult. But overall we have our guy looking pretty decent. So let's just go ahead and set something up just for, you know, the sake of making it look nice. Let's grab this camera and move it over. Just going to rotate it around so it's looking at our character. You can see the preview over in the lower right corner. Just going to move it closer. Kind of centralize it a bit. If we click on game mode, you'll be able to see what the camera's seeing. And what we can do if you wanted to is dock that over to the side. Just drag the tab over. And here we'll be able to see exactly what we've got. Let's change the background colour just to black, maybe something like that. So let's just angle that up and then angle it down a bit so it's just looking at him. And now if we maximise this view, you can see we have our character. What I'm going to do now is just add a component to the camera, and we're going to go for image effects. We're going to go under rendering, and we're going to do screen space ambient occlusion. That's going to add some of the finer shadows to his body. If we just play with this slider, let's see what kind of examples we get. If we move the camera a little bit closer so we can see the details. This kind of thing is going to add tiny little shadows here and there. So let's turn the radius up a bit. Sample count to high. And we'll do the occlusion intensity up a bit. So you can see them. You can definitely see the difference now. Let's put the radius up a little bit. 1's the maximum. Let's try that at 0.7, 0.5, 0.5, a little bit tighter. Try 0.25. 0.2 gives a nice soft result. You can turn the blur down a bit if you like as well, so it's a bit sharper. And I think that's going to be alright as it is. Just move the camera back. There we go. Let's go on to add component, and we'll do image effects, we'll do bloom and glow, and I think we'll try bloom and flares. So that's ambient screen space ambient occlusion. Let's go ahead and let's change the intensity of this, so we'll get a bit of a glow on him. That'll go into minus values as well if you really wanted to. Let's get a bit of a glow there. Turn the threshold. There we go. So let's go on to switch that to complex mode. Let's go cast lens flares. And we can adjust the threshold up and down there. With the lens flare modes, we can tweak how they appear. Change the blur iterations if you want, if you think it's going to make much of a difference. Going to add another component, go to image effects, and here I think we're going to go into, is it rendering? Nope, we're going to go to I think other, and turn anti-aliasing on. So with the anti-aliasing component, we'll do FXAA 2, I think. Maybe 3. Gives us a bit of a tweak setting. So this will blur some of the edges so it's not quite so jagged. And can adjust the sharpness of the edges. I don't think that's really doing much. Cool, so let's see if we can maximize this a little bit further. Don't think we can. So I'm just going to drag this out and turn that up. And we could get a nice render like that if we wanted to. So let's just leave that there for now. We can tweak the camera a bit more. Tweak the position. And there we go. So I'm just going to see if I can full screen that. There we are. And see if I can tweak it to be 1080 or thereabouts. And here I can just hit print screen, and that's going to give me a render. I've got Dropbox to save screenshots automatically, so that's going to be uploaded to Dropbox. If we wanted to, we can always just come back to Photoshop. Just drag this over here. We can go to New. Of course, that's on the other screen. Press OK. And we can paste that in. It's going to screenshot everything on my desktop. So let's just go ahead and zoom in on the bits we want. We can go to crop. And we can crop our guy out. There we go. And there we have a render. So there's a game character inside of a game engine. So that could be it if you wanted it to. But we're going to go through Marmoset and see what else we can come up with rather. So let's go ahead and get Marmoset open. Okay, so this is Marmoset Toolbag. It's pretty much meant to simulate a game engine, and it does it fairly well. But what we're going to do first of all is just import import our mesh. So we're just going to go to add mesh, and let's just go to files, the Forgemaster. Now the OBJ that we exported, we're going to import that. Press open, and there we go. We have our Forgemaster with all of his bits and pieces. So you can hold down Alt on the keyboard and the middle mouse button to move the camera around. Rotate, holding the left mouse button while holding down Alt. Zoom in and out by holding Alt and moving the holding down the right mouse button and moving around like that, very much like Max. And there we go. So you see that we have these chunks of mesh. Those are all the separate sections, so we need to start bringing in the different materials. So I'm going to create a bunch of different materials here. This I'm going to call head. This I'm going to call upper for the torso. That I'm going to call lower. Just press new, just double click on the name to use it. It's very straightforward. And I'm going to call that accessories. Then I'm going to just leave that as it is. So the head, I'm going to drag over to the head and drop it on. The upper body, I'm going to drop that over onto the upper body. The lower body, drop that onto there. And the accessories, just going to drop that onto the hammer and onto the apron. So let's go to that head, and we have the surface options here. The albedo mask map is actually our head texture, our diffuse texture. So let's go into here and choose our head and open it. That's going to pop it in. It's going to look really glossy and weird at the start, but we'll see what else happens. We're going to go to the upper body and load in the upper body DM. These are not the ones that we used for Unity, otherwise things would look really weird. The lower body, let's go ahead and select that. And the accessories, there we go. So we can put the normal maps in as well. Select the normal map for accessories and OK. Let's go to head and we'll do the normal map for the head. Upper body, same deal. And the lower body. There we go. Okay, so everything's in, and it looks a little bit weird because everything's ridiculously shiny. You can control that just by using some sliders. We can turn the intensity of the specular up and down using, gloss, I think it is. Helps if I'm actually on the right thing. You can turn the gloss up and down on the head, and turn the horizon smoothing, which will kind of create a Fresnel effect. Turn the gloss all the way up or all the way down if you like. The reflectivity is basically governed by the intensity slider down here. I tend to turn that all the way down, and then the gloss tends to work a little bit better for me. So I'm going to use the same setting on the upper body. So that was set to 0.56. Let's just drag that down to the same sort of setting. Just type it in. And that was 0.5. And that intensity was set to 0. So that looks pretty decent already. So let's go ahead and do the lower body. Just going to set the intensity down to 0 on that. And you can still play with the gloss, so you can kind of add a gloss to it. It's not controlled by a specular map at the moment, so it's not going to look particularly right. Let's just get the accessories, turn the intensity down on there a bit. You could always just use this as it is. So there we have it, we have our guy in Marmoset. Now you can see we've got a fire station in the background. This is what's called physically based lighting, using indirect lighting from HDR images. I covered this in my advanced light caps tutorial, so if you want that explaining further, go ahead and check that out. We can change this by clicking on the sky option over in the left, and we can choose presets as a glacier, which is probably a little bit more suited for our Viking. We've got a castle at sunset. We've got desert road, it's pretty good for a daylight scenario. Ennis house, which is kind of cool. We can rotate the entire environment around as well, so that's pretty cool as well. So you can choose your lighting setup really. We can go to our list again. We can go to a construction environment in the evening, which has some pretty cool effects for nighttime lighting. Of course, we've got the garage, got a cathedral, all this kind of stuff. Hedgerow, actually quite nice lighting on there. Fluorescent indoors. And we've got all sorts of stuff. Got late evening, got museums, hillsides. I think that's probably very Viking-y as well, I think. Just because it's quite overcast, quite dark, cold looking. Courtyard in Pisa. Smashed windows, which is rather creepy, especially if you're doing a creature or something. Got a church. And a gallery as well. So that's pretty cool. Really, which one you choose is really completely up to you. You can also create lights in here. You can add a light, which you can use to enhance the current rendering if you wanted to. Turn the brightness up, set it to cast shadows, which is usually quite nice. When I tend to do that, I usually turn the sky background off and basically set this up exactly the same as I would with Unity. I prefer getting renders from Unity just because it is actually genuinely a game engine. If we want to tweak these a little bit more, let's try just putting in our a gloss map on here. So let's put in the accessories in there. We'll see what kind of effect that this actually has. So I'm just going to delete that light for now and select our sky. Just going to rotate that around a bit. Choose a different background. I think I'll go with desert road. So putting that gloss map in has worked pretty well. It's given us more of a specularity difference on there. Can turn the reflectivity up, though that will sort of reflect the environment a bit more. Turn the Fresnel up and down. All these are settings you can play around with. I'm not going to go through every single one because you'll just get bored, trust me. But just have a play around with the options you have. Now you might find something cool. It's going to go to the head and put the head specular map on. There we go. And from here, let's go ahead and turn on horizon smoothing. And we can increase the reflectivity. Didn't quite work all that well. Let's try setting the specular map as a reflectivity mask. So that's quite intense. We can turn the gloss up and actually see we get a reflection in the eyes, so it actually looks pretty realistic. Really, there should be colour in the reflectivity map, specular map for Marmoset. Otherwise, you get this kind of really freaky stuff going on. So you get really reflective eyes. But I never really use these maps inside of Marmoset. Sometimes use them just to enhance it a little bit, so getting some reflections in the eye is always a nice thing. If you have a look, it's quite a decent reflection, so it's not bad at all. Just going to set that at 0.75, set at 0.15 I think, and we'll do a Fresnel of 0.5, and we'll just use those same values on everything else. So let's go to the upper body, import the gloss map for the upper body. There we go. And I believe that was 0.5, so that's exactly 0.75. And I think we had a Fresnel of 0.5. And an intensity of 0.15, I think it was. So yeah, this really needs to have a colour value to it more than anything, but it'll work well enough. Just turn that back down. There you can see with the kind of effects that we can get. We're getting some nice reflectivity on the metal sections, on the gloves and such. So that looks pretty good. The physical based lighting is fantastic. More and more games are going to be using this in the future. Unity can do it, as Marmoset have also released a shader pack which will emulate this kind of effect inside of Unity. So let's just get the specular map on for the accessories. Press OK. Let's turn the intensity down. Turn the Fresnel. Yeah, it's fine. Turn the gloss. Keep the gloss up. Turn the intensity down though. And there we go. We have some pretty decent render material right there. We can actually go to the render menu and we can turn off the sky, so we can literally have it just against the background if we wanted to. So we can set that up just however we want. We can turn on local reflections if you wanted to. For where we have reflectivity, it will reflect a little bit of the environment in it as well, or the rest of the mesh. It's not really appropriate for what we've got here. We can turn on high-res shadows and turn on ambient occlusion. You see that immediately has an effect of making everything look a little bit more integrated with each other. You can really go over the top with it, but everything looks a lot more integrated with those tiny shadows. And we can turn the wireframe on as well, turn the intensity of it, so you can kind of see how everything fits together. So that'll be really handy for a render for your portfolio or something. And really that's all there is to it, I guess. You've got your lighting set up using physical based renders, and I'm just going to do a render now, and this will be a turntable or something for the intro of this tutorial. So there we have it, guys. We have a finished piece, and you can do a render of this if you like. You can go to capture and just do image, and that'll capture an image, usually to your desktop, I believe. So if I just bring up my file manager over on the other screen, let's go to the desktop, and see we have a screenshot, of course, which is also opened up on my other monitor. Just drag that over. And there we go, we have our game character rendered out. So you can just take screenshots like that. A few more things you can do actually. If we go into scene and click on camera, we do get a bunch of other options. We have depth of field. If we turn on depth of field, we'll be able to change the focal distance, so we can actually get you know, sort of a nice depth of field going on there. You can do this inside Unity as well using one of the camera modifiers, one of the camera components. So this is really good if we're trying to get a nice render up close. So let's turn the focus distance down so we can focus on on our character. We can also click sticky focus, which will allow us to actually set the focus point. So we want his face to be in focus all the time. So we can set that there. And then we can play around with all these settings if you want. You can turn down the near blur, or just have it on a little bit if you wanted to. And turn up the far blur. So it just gets blurred the further away it is. Do an aperture rotation on there if you want to. I just don't really know what that does, to be honest. Kind of changes the effect a little bit. We can also come down here and change the field of view of the camera. And we can adjust the sharpness. So we can always sharpen up the details a bit if we wanted to. Change the limit to soften the effect or increase the effect a little bit. Got tone mapping, so you can increase the exposure. Just going to undo that. You can increase the contrast and the contrast centers as well as the saturation of the image. So I tend to use pretty much defaults unless I want to increase the contrast a tiny bit, like along with the saturation a bit perhaps. We then have the bloom, which blooms you. So you can add a bit of bloom to the shoulders and whatnot and change the size of it. So you can have a very subtle effect if you wanted to. You can add a vignette, so add darken around the edge of the screen. And you can also add noise to it as well. Noise has a good effect. It can really help sharpen up an image. A little bit on the weird side, but it does. So we can capture another image. Head to our desktop. Check out this one. And we've got a little bit of nice post-processing going on there. We don't have to do it inside of Photoshop. We can just do it inside of Marmoset. So yeah, that's pretty much Marmoset. Have a play around with it. We can create a turntable. If you wanted to, you can do a camera turntable and press play, and that'll rotate the camera around. And that looks pretty cool with things going in and out of focus as we go. Just turning this up or down will actually change the speed at which the camera will rotate. We've got anti-aliasing set up 4 times temporal, which is absolutely fine. And here we can do a scene turntable as well. So if we set that back to 0, this will actually rotate the scene around rather than the camera. So that'll keep the camera in a fixed position, which works pretty cool. Might turn the noise down on the render actually. So let's go back to the scene and click on the main camera. And I'm just going to turn the grain down. I have a little bit of grain, but not too much. And we can play that. I think I might actually reduce the sharpen that we've got on there as well. It's playing with the ambient occlusion a bit too much. So yeah, that's pretty much Marmoset, and that's our project finished, guys. So we have a character which we could then send on to rigging, and then animation that'll get passed on to the rest of the developers, and you'll end up with your character in the game, which is pretty cool. So yeah, let's just do a quick setup for a turntable. I think let's just go ahead and bring him up there so it's fully in the screen. Let's just change the camera, and I think we'll just reduce the near blur and increase the far blur a bit because depth of field always looks good. And then from here we'll do a scene turntable to see how it looks. So pretty good. Cool. And now we'll do a capture, and we'll do a turntable capture. Let's just click on settings first, so that's going to make sure it gets put out at 1920 by 1080. We don't want transparency on there. It's going to rotate clockwise at a frame rate of 30 frames per second, and it's going to be in a PNG format with 16 times sampling, so it's going to be nice and smooth. And we can go to the outputs folder. Let's just change the outputs folder, if I can remember how to do that. Preferences, output. I'm going to put this as renders. There we go. And I'm going to call that turntable. And select folder. Okay. And we'll just do a capture and we'll press turntable, and that will give you a turntable. It won't put it in a video, but it will export it as images, which you can then use any video software, video editing software, to compile into a video, and you'll have a turntable. So there we go, guys. Okay guys, well that's the end of this masterclass. Hope you found it useful. We've had a few ups and downs, had a few issues and problems to overcome, but that's part of the fun of doing it in real time. You get to see all the ups and downs, all the problems and mistakes, and I hope you've learned how to get around some of them. It's been a massive effort on my part. It's been rather exhausting, far more than I thought it would be, so I can understand why people edit these things down. It's been a bit ridiculous. But if you've appreciated what I've done, then likes, shares and subscriptions would be really appreciated. If you really value what I've done here in terms of the amount of effort I've put into getting this done for you, then there's also a donation button on my website. So feel free to visit that and drop me a donation. That'd be massively appreciated. And in the meantime guys, I hope you've got something which would look great in your portfolio, and we've got some nice renders. So you guys have a good day, and I'll join you next time when I've got something interesting to share. You take care.